There is a huge misconception out there that if you haven't made it by your 30s, you're essentially done. We see it everywhere, this obsession with youth and being fast. But if you look at the real world, the people who actually hold things together, you'll notice that most of them didn't hit their peak until they were well into their 40s or 50s. If you're in that midlife bracket right now, you've probably noticed that your brain works differently than it used to. You're not as impulsive, you don't get rattled as easily. That's not just getting older, it's a specific type of intelligence that only shows up after you've spent a few decades actually living. Today, I want to talk about why being a late bloomer is actually a massive strategic advantage. Before we get into it, like the video and subscribe to Second Half Wisdom. We're talking about how to handle the second half of life with a bit more strategy and a lot less noise. Late blooming intelligence thrives on the accumulation of experience. When you're 20, you're basically guessing. You have energy, but you don't have a map. By the time you're 40, you've seen enough patterns to know how things usually play out. This is the difference between knowing a theory and having an instinct. Think about anyone who's spent years mastering a skill. Let's take a survivalist or a craftsman. A beginner is always worried about having the newest, most expensive tools. They think the gear will save them. But a guy who's been doing it for 30 years doesn't care about the gear as much. He knows how to build a fire in the rain because he's done it 1,000 times. He's not thinking. He's just reacting. That's what midlife does to your decision-making. You stop overcomplicating things. You've seen enough trial and error in your own life that your judgment is now refined. You see the shortcut because you've already walked the long way too many times. There's a certain calm that comes with age, and that calm is a superpower in a crisis. Younger people tend to play for the immediate win. They want the quick payout or the instant recognition. But when you've lived through a few market crashes, a couple of bad jobs, or personal setbacks, you stop looking at the next 5 minutes. You start looking at the next 5 years. You become a strategist by default. You start evaluating your choices based on what actually lasts. Instead of jumping on every new trend or get-rich-quick scheme, you focus on systems that are durable. You'd rather spend your time on a project that's going to be useful for a decade than something that's going to be obsolete by next summer. Your strategy shifts from trying to be the fastest person in the room to being the one who makes the fewest mistakes. In the long run, the person who makes fewer mistakes always wins. Growth in your 40s and 50s looks different. It's not about adding more stress to your life. It's about cutting away the stuff that doesn't work. It's about mastery. Most of us have subjects we've been interested in for years. Maybe it's how history repeats itself, how power works, or even practical tactical planning. Midlife is when you finally have the patience to actually master those things. You stop skimming the surface and you go deep. You start looking at your daily routine and you realize where you're leaking time and energy. You start building habits that actually compound, like staying in shape for the long haul or getting your finances to a point where they work for you, not the other way around. You're not chasing novelty anymore, you're chasing efficiency. The best part about being older is that it's very hard for the world to shock you. You've been through the ringer a few times. That gives you foresight. While everyone else is reacting emotionally to a problem, you're usually the one saying, "Okay, I've seen this before, here's how we handle it." Whether it's preparing for an emergency or just managing a family crisis, your experience turns into a kind of resilience that younger people just can't fake. You don't panic because you know that panic doesn't solve anything. If you've spent years practicing a skill, whatever it is, it's now a part of you. In a high-stress situation, you don't have to try to stay calm. You just rely on the decades of preparation you've already put in. That's a level of reliability that only comes with time. If you want to make the most of this, you have to be deliberate about it. First, stop trying to know everything about everything. Focus on 2 or 3 areas where you can be a legitimate expert. Second, start looking back at your own track record. Honestly evaluate your past decisions. Where did you get lucky? Where did you mess up? When you start seeing your own patterns, you gain a massive amount of control over your future. And finally, use history. Don't just read it like a storybook, read it like a manual. People haven't changed in thousands of years. The same mistakes made by leaders 500 years ago are being made today. If you can recognize those moves, you'll stay ahead of everyone else. If you are ready to harness your accumulated knowledge and turn your midlife into your most strategic years, subscribe to Second Half Wisdom, like this video, and share it with others who value insight over noise.